Hello, guys, and welcome to a new episode of the Center Talks. I am your host, Ciro, and today I have with me Courtney. Courtney, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everybody. So I'm the lead developer of KnoxVaults. We've been working on this for about last 8 months. Basically, we're a DeFi options vault provider. We're really just trying to solidify ourselves in the structured product space. So really excited to be here.
Thanks for joining. I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. I am not very familiar myself with vaults and how options work. I did a bit of a review to just get a better understanding before we have this conversation. So, would you mind giving us a little bit like a rundown of how all of this would work? What is a vault, and what is the service that you're going to be providing?
Yeah, so I think at a very basic level, a vault is really a contract where people can deposit their funds. Those funds could be used in, a wide variety of ways. In our case, we're using them to underwrite options. But more or less, right, a vault is essentially just a contract where people deposit their funds. Those funds are used, and the way they're used, hopefully, is providing some type of yield. And over time, the balance of that vault should increase. And so as a depositor, your share of that vault will remain the same, but the amount of assets will increase. So therefore, when you go to withdraw, you'll be pulling out more assets, assuming the vault has actually accrued yield over that period of time from when you deposited to when you withdraw. Um, that, so that's more or less a basic rundown of what a generalized vault is. In our particular case, we're really focused on the options space. So we're basically providing strategies, in particular covered call and secured put selling strategies that people can take advantage of, right? So if you're really interested in options and you don't necessarily have like the technical expertise to automate these strategies yourself, you can come to us and we basically provide that as a structured product for you, right? So basically, the way our strategy works is it's a covered call, right? So every week we'll select an out of the money option or an option that we expect to expire out of the money. And that will be the option that we use the vault's collateral or the vault's liquidity to underwrite options for that particular week. And as long as the option expires out of the money, we should be able to keep the premium and continue selling options and accrue yield that way.
I see. That was a good explanation. As I was reading about this, it made a lot of sense to me. So I know that one reason people would usually go for options trading is because it offers you it offers you the ability to invest with a decreased risk if you're doing it correctly. Was this something that you had in mind when you were thinking about building this product?
Yeah, I think so. That really taps into the history of Knox Finance. Um, so when I personally started working on this, I paired up with my co-founder Xerox Caesar, and he was really interested in options in the options space, and actually got me more interested. I mean, I'd known about options for quite some time, but when we started talking about the project, or when he started telling me more about the project, I just got really interested in it. And I know it's something that he had been working on uh, for basically the entirety of 2021. Was figuring out, hey, how do I one um, automate this covered call strategy, and two, how do I even scale this up so that way it's a bit more capital efficient. And so I think that was kind of like the lead in to 2022 when we started working on this project. Was like he was basically we were basically trying to solve some problems that he'd come across in 2021. So
And could you take me back to when this started? I'm very interested in learning about how how these DAOs, how these companies get founded. Like, what drove you guys to start building, especially at the
Yeah.
end of 2021?
Yeah. That's a good question. So I actually was signed up for ETH Denver. Yeah, that was the. So I was intending to join that hackathon, and so I was just randomly in the ETH. Shout out to ETH Global, right? I was just in their Discord at the time, and I was just kind of like scrolling through people looking for team members and all that stuff, and I came across a post and I was like, oh, okay, this person's looking for somebody, a developer to join their team. They're working in DeFi, check. They're dealing with options, check. They're dealing with vaults, check. Okay, cool. Like a lot of stuff that really, really strikes an interest for me. So I literally just reached out, and within a pretty short period of time, we got things moving along. Fast forward, I think maybe like a couple months, because that was probably in January. We actually get to ETH Denver. At that point, we're pretty serious about it, and we're actually looking for like ways to get funded. We ended up getting a grant through Premia, who is they're basically building an AMM for options, right? Fully decentralized, options protocol. And we ended up getting a grant through them not long after ETH Denver. So that was pretty much like the beginning of the project. And then pretty much since then, we've been working on it full time. So.
You said that you met your co-founder through ETH Global, which is very relatable because I also started a small website with somebody through ETH Global, and despite the fact that we are not in the same country and that to this point we still haven't physically met, I feel like we are able to build things together pretty well. Is your work with your co-founder is it async? Are you guys working in the same location, or are you in different parts of the world?
Yeah, it'd be really nice if we were co-located. So he's not in the same state as I am. We're not too far off time zone wise. We're only an hour off time zone wise. We have met. If I couldn't imagine if we had met. And it was actually really weird not meeting him for the first like several months, right? Like part of the reason why I even went to Denver was like just to verify that he was an actual person and was real, you know.
Yeah, I've had this experience before. I get
So
that.
yeah, it's just really wild how we work these days, compared to the generation before us. But anyway, so we uh what was I going to say here? Yeah, so we're not too far off. We have met a few times in person, and like going forward, we're actually trying to use these like conferences as our like time to like come together and meet, right? So like maybe like a couple times a year we'll like travel somewhere together, and have like a working week or something like that. So
Yeah, I can totally see that working. It's actually pretty nice too when you meet somebody that you work with once every couple of months. It gives me at least a sense of like reinvigoration. I feel like I'm so much more driven after meeting somebody that I worked with, because I work online the majority of the time. So it's nice to see that other people share the same experience. Um, there is a question. So while I was going through your documentation, I saw that you guys are trying to launch on Arbitrum. Um, can you tell me why you chose Arbitrum specifically over the other chains?
yeah, that's a great question. So like let's filter out some chains, right? And no, like, offense to anyone who's being filtered out, there's reasons, right? So uh Ethereum, right? We all have had experience when we're trying to like do like a fairly simple transaction. Maybe we're trying to swap or something, or we're trying to like get a loan on Aave, and like you're paying, right, like maybe like 1% of the actual loan, or like 1% of the value of that swap is actually going to gas, right? Like that's a pretty substantial amount of money to be paying. And that's like that that's honestly a relatively small number. That number could be very high relative to the amount that you're actually transacting. So like obviously, I think Ethereum, my personal philosophy on Ethereum is like that is a chain that should be reserved for very high value transactions, right? Most things probably don't necessarily need the security of Ethereum. They also probably just don't need they just don't need to happen on Ethereum to begin with. I think a lot of things can be done on rollups, and I think just generally speaking, that seems to be the direction that a lot of things are going. So um, you know, we were very comfortable with using Arbitrum as our platform, mainly because that team delivers. We've seen them. I've been using Arbitrum for a very long time now. It feels like, and I've been very satisfied with how dedicated they are to delivering a high quality product that does what they say it does, right? And obviously the gas price, the cost of your transactions is incredibly low. And so yeah, I think that was a very important factor for us. Like we trusted security, and we do really appreciate that. It's very low cost. Yeah, that's really important for our users, of course. The other aspect was like, yeah, like you have other chains out there like Avalanche. You have like even Solana, for example. Um, Generally, we were trying to just use things that were EVM compatible. So unfortunately, Solana would be filtered out there. Um, you know, eh, we maybe we'll go to Avalanche at some point, but it's definitely not on our roadmap currently. Um, and then Optimism is actually something. There's another chain that again, that's a team that we think is very capable of pulling things off, and so far they've done a really great job at pulling through and creating you know a very impressive blockchain. So
As a developer, I also I mostly worked on Polygon in the past. Recently, I've been dabbling a lot in like mainnet, but seeing what's happening on Optimism and Arbitrum, I can't help but get excited. The lowered fees, the improvement in how much power is needed to keep this running, it seems like there's pluses all around, and then having something that's EVM compatible means that eventually you can just launch it on all the other EVM chains without much work, you know. So I see. It was just very cool seeing that you decided to go with Arbitrum first, and I think your guys are going to have a lot of success with that, especially seeing that now they're getting a lot more users with the people are saying that they might launch a token soon. They might be doing airdrops. So great choice. Um, I want to go back a little bit and talk about options. And so could you possibly help explain it to somebody that might be a beginner in this space? Like, why would somebody go with options versus just buying spot?
sure, yeah. So if you wanted to buy an option, right? I think just generally speaking, there's a few reasons why you may want to buy options, and I think that's possibly an important thing to think about, right? One, you can go either direction. You could short or you could go long, right? If you're buying spot, you can only go one way, right? You're buying spot, you're holding the actual asset, you can only go long. Um, so that's one part. The other part is there's capital lockup, right? So if you buy spot, let's say you want to buy one ETH, um, you have to pay the dollar amount, or you have to pay whatever the value is of that of ETH at the time. Right? So if we're talking in dollars, you're gonna have to pay $1,500 that to buy it. If you are considering options, um, I mean, if there's a bit of a different mechanic that's going on there, right? Like when you're buying options, you're basically buying insurance. You're saying like, hey, I expect the price to either go up or down, and depending on whether or not it exceeds that price, like that is when that option should be exercised. So really, the only thing you're paying at the time when you're signed to enter into that contract is the premium, right? So if you were trying to buy a spot to hedge some sort of risk, the amount of capital you would need up front is much greater than that you would need for an option. So um, I think those two things generally make options very appealing. The other aspect is like leverage. Again, because like you're really only paying for the premium, and you're only yeah, because you're paying for the premium, you're paying a much lower cost that allows you to like cover. You could buy many more options, right? So like you want to buy like 10 ETH or something like that in spot. That's a lot more money than buying 10 option contracts. So in that sense, you gain leverage with options.
So to recap, it allows the person who's buying to have a bit more control. It lowers the cost upfront that you would need to participate, and it is less risky. Well, that depends. I don't want to say that outright because I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I seem to understand from this. Am I right here?
Yeah, I think you have more control over your risk, right? Like it's a tool for managing risk, right? Like you're buying the insurance because you're concerned like the price may go in an unfavorable direction, and you're trying to ensure that like if it does, you're protected to some degree, right? And
Mhm.
it is different than spot because like yeah, like let's say the price went up a ton in your favor, buying spot would have probably benefited you more than it would have but buying the option. But like again, you're it's I guess it's just a different way of trading fundamentally. So like, it's I think it's kind of hard to make that comparison directly, but like yeah, it's just it gives you more control at the end of the day of how you manage your risk. So
One of my favorite things that I read during your documentation, the fact that you do not lock up capital and people can withdraw their capital at any point. Um, why did you decide to make that choice? Because I assume there might be different DAOs or companies that are trying to do the same thing, but don't offer immediate withdrawals for their clients.
mm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think early on when we were like designing the product and trying to figure things out, right? Like we were kind of trying to figure out how to ideate, or I'm sorry, how to differentiate ourselves from other people in the DeFi options vault space. And so like one of the main benefits with being able to withdraw your options at any time is, I'm sorry, withdraw your assets from the vault at any time is okay. Like let's say we're in the middle of an epoch. We're currently waiting for the option that the vault has underwritten to expire. You can basically withdraw you withdraw your share of the vault, and the withdrawal will include a portion of any collateral, so possibly like DAI or WETH that's in the vault, as well as a proportional amount of short tokens, right? And so if you are like concerned that the market is going to get like super volatile or something like that, or like you just basically want to exit that short position, you basically just unassign yourself from that option. You basically sell your option back into the premium pool, and you'd be able to exit the position that way. So in essence, you're not really locked in to the position throughout the entirety of the epoch. You could basically like leave and exit at any time. And so we found that some people were actually incredibly excited about that because again, that's a way that you can manage your risk a little bit better than if you were like stuck in that position for the entirety or until the expiration.
For me, reading that just gave me so much confidence in your product because nowadays we've been hearing all of these exchanges that are like disallowing, like they're not letting people withdraw their funds, and it seems to me that the right option now on is to give the user full control of their funds, even though it might create some difficulty for the protocol. It might make things more complicated. You might need to think about things a lot more. So I really admire the fact that you guys are doing that and you guys are taking the time to build a product around um, what you're letting people do, which is have full control of their funds at all points. So I'm definitely going to be using it when it does launch. Um,
Okay.
for in this conversation, we mentioned that there is like a lot of issues in DeFi at the moment, or maybe not DeFi, just with crypto, let's say. So, how does that affect your building process? What does that feel like when you see everything falling apart all the time?
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing right now because it's just like, yes, there are tons of problems. I will say in CeFi, um, and DeFi too. DeFi had its problems, I would say, even before this year, right? But those problems are very different from CeFi problems. Um, so like, yeah, it's hard to like have this conversation without talking about FTX a little bit. Because I think that has created a fair amount of issues for everybody involved in the space, and it's quite unfortunate how things have played out. And without getting too gloomy about it, right? Like there, I think there was a flushing out that's I think happens every cycle in every industry as well. It's not even just crypto, but what will happen is you'll see a lot of these you'll see a lot of people leave the space, but what will stay and this happened through the last cycle, what remains will be like a very hardened group of crypto and Web3 enthusiasts who are going to uh, really make things make crypto great again, right? Like we're going to build back in a way that like I think we're gonna like the innovation like that's going to come through in the next cycle is going to be really impressive. Like it's going to be completely different from the last cycle, and that's at least what I've seen. It's like every single time we go through, a high and a low, it's like the high is just higher than the last high. And I'm not talking about like price either. I'm talking about like actual innovation. Like if you look at like what we have now versus like 2018, it's so much better. It is so much better. Oh my God. And that's because you had a lot of people during 2018, 2019, 2020 who stayed and kept building. And then like you had this whole wave of people who came in and like built on top of that. And yeah, like now we're like this space has gotten better over time, even though there's been pain involved. It has gotten only better. Um, so I'm not. I don't even think I answered your question, sir. Could you ask that one more time? I just got really
I
excited
think
about
you did answer the question. So I what I initially asked is like, how does this affect your building process? And what
that.
I'm hearing is that you're still remaining positive and you have this outlook for the future where it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I agree. I think that we're going through this cycle and we're cleaning up all the things that didn't work. And this is going to make space for all of these new players that will have better products, that will have learned from the lessons of the people that came before them. And I think that even though right now it does look pretty gloomy and a lot of people have lost a lot of money and a lot of people have gone through a lot of issues because of this, I think people are going to build back better. People are going to be a lot more conscious of how they go about building their products. So I think you did answer that question pretty well. I think that leads me into asking because I do want to know what is like a day in the life of building Knox? How do you go about your days while building this?
Yeah. So that totally depends on like what phase we're in or like where we've been, I guess you could say, because there have been moments where like things look very different from other phases. So I would say like the probably the most interesting phase would be like when I'm actually building. By the way, I'm the only developer on the team as of right now. So I'm doing pretty much all the smart contract development work. Our partner Premia, they're actually doing the front end, so that's actually been incredibly helpful. We're very grateful to have them as a partner. So yeah, like I would say, during like the regular, I'd say like the majority of the time when like I'm actually trying to ship a feature or build a feature out, my day is just basically a combination of like, it may or may not involve a meeting or two, or depending on who I need to reach out to, may involve some like, some discussion with other members of the team. Um, Most of my day is spent either planning other work, planning other features out, actually developing, designing, or testing. I would say like it's probably like one of those four things that are going on. So yeah, just like I said, we're a fairly small team, but most of the time is just generally spent coding at the end of the day, and every now and then I have to get a phone call.
Yeah,
So
I mean the calls they get more close. Like I seem to have a lot more calls nowadays as a developer, and I think that it's a pretty healthy part of the of the process. I like the calls myself, but so you spend a lot of time writing the code for the smart contracts, testing, and working on a ton of different sides of the tech. And your partner is the business development guy.
yes, that's correct.
I got it. I got it. Are you guys trying to have more people on your future, or is this something that you want to basically build together right now and then maybe look into expanding after you launch?
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about is like how do we expand? Because it's like, just given the state of the industry right now and where things are, like, you want to have as long of a runway as you can, of course. More people you bring on, more expenses, the more your overhead grows, right? So that's a constant. That's something we do talk about, right? And I think it does also fit in with the roadmap of becoming a DAO eventually, right? Like being, opening up our governance and allowing people to kind of contribute in a much more open way, right? Like 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 you see with other larger protocols that have been around for a bit. So that's something we do think about. But for now, we've been able to get as far as we have with uh, just uh, just us, myself and my co-founder, as well as like hiring or outsourcing some work that we need.
It's really impressive. The development process is like very involved, so being able to contribute on so many different parts of a project is it's no easy feat. Um, Given that you have this experience now building a real product and you have had, I assume, multiple years of experience in DeFi in general, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when DeFi summer came around, I was all about it.
Yeah, I got you. So, given that you have experience in this field and that you're now building a real world product with real use cases, what is some advice you can give to people who are newer, who want to like find something to build or want to
Mm.
find something to work on?
Oh yeah, I see this question come up all the time, or I feel like it's been asked to me directly a couple of times. I mean, if you're really interested in like assuming this, somebody had like no background in crypto at all, and they were just really excited and wanted to get involved in this space, I would say, you know, one, just learn about like crypto, learn about blockchain, and then learn about like blockchain constraints. And then after that, like learn security, like really learn security, like actually audit some contracts, like try to find some bugs, do all the, Ethernaut and like I think it's called capture the DeFi challenges. Like they're really, that's a really that will build your understanding of crypto fundamentals. Understand the EVM and how it works, and then that's going to even involve like having to go back and really understand like just like basics of your intro CS classes. Honestly, is going to have like a lot of overlap there. So I think I would say like just start off with the fundamentals and really like hone that in, and you'll be like really far ahead of the game. Once you do that, you're gonna have a really good foundation to work off of. And like if you're super interested in like working on a project or building something out, join a hackathon. Like I don't, yeah, like hackathons are probably like they're just so underrated. They don't get nearly enough credit for what they are. And it can be difficult to find like a good team to work with or a good project to jump into. But generally speaking, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck with a hackathon. Um, so also like learn the space, like learn. I think this particular one is going to be challenging for anybody. But like learn the history as well. Like there's you if you I think like a lot of people get like really surprised with crypto and like certain blowups that they see and like they're all like they it just it gets like a really bad rep, but like none of this stuff is new, right? Like in 2017 we had BitConnect, right? And that wasn't really much different from like a lot of the other grift you saw in 2021 and 2020, right? Like we've seen these types of characters come around and they just keep managing to fool people and convince them that they're like they have something that's of value that clearly it's just not. It's like either just a direct Ponzi or like vaporware or something like that, right? So like just go in no understanding, like be positive about it, but like don't like go in and get rugged or something like that. Like just understand there's a lot of grifters in this space, and it's very easy because it attracts that type of personality, I think, because in a lot of ways money is directly related, right? Like so it's very easy for someone to come in and like make very large promises or whatever, and that's obviously just not the case. So yeah, like I said, like don't like let that get in your way. Just realize that is certainly the case. So just be careful with what you trust in this space, I guess you could say. But doesn't mean that everything's bad for by any means.
So to recap, for myself and for those who are listening, you would start with something like learning about what the blockchain is. There's a lot of very high level overviews of that. There's even websites. I could put a link in the description to a website that shows you like what a blockchain is, what a block is, and like walks you through it in a visual way. I found that very helpful. Learn some basic security, learn how to read smart contracts, audit some code, participate in some capture the flag games. There's a lot of those in different DeFi communities. Hackathons are a great place to meet people, to find projects to participate with, and learn the history when you do get the chance, because like you said, none of this is new. A lot of this stuff has existed even before crypto. Ponzi schemes, scams. A lot of this stuff has been around forever, and it's just manifesting itself in a new space. So take some time to learn the history, figure out what makes a good project, what makes a bad project, and overall just don't let the negativity stop you from participating, because this is a very open space. You could pretty much work with anybody, no matter where they're from, no matter what country they're in, what language they speak in. For me, this is a very open space, and I think that's what really motivates me to keep working in it. Um, I want to ask a bit of a personal question. Maybe it's still related to this topic, but what initially got you into crypto in the first place? Were you a developer before that, or uh, you know?
Yeah, no. I love this question because it's just like it goes back in my own personal like journey and my into software and it really hits home. So I actually started off teaching myself how to code. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and my first job out of college was working for a radar company, basically, right? And so um, I was working as a systems engineer for probably about like 2.5 years, and the technology was honestly like it, it, it was interesting for I'd say some time, but like I started to realize like that wasn't going to change either. It was slowly changing, right? But the technology I was working on had been around for like since before my parents were born. Like that, yeah, this stuff goes back to like World War II. And it's just a much slower moving industry. And I just really felt like I saw a lot of things going on with these just various startups. And I had always wanted to start my own business. And so I figured like, hey, look, the world is moving very fast in software. And I just felt like I had to jump in at some point. I felt like that was where I had to go. So I started teaching myself how to code. And honestly, like right around the same time I started teaching myself how to code, I heard about Ethereum when the Wano crypto hack happened. Long story short, there, I got super interested in Ethereum. Like I knew about Bitcoin, like for years before that, but like I never really like thought much of it. But when I heard about like smart contracts and like all the cool use cases for smart contracts, I got super hooked. I was like, oh, word, like your car could be, could do micropayments, and you could like have some type of streaming or something like that for streaming payment system where you're just paying for as you're using some service instead of like paying for an entire month at a time you could just like do so many more cool and interesting things with payments. Um, and so I just got really interested in 2017 with crypto. I ended up joining a startup. It was actually a crypto startup called TheaMesh, and they were building. They're basically creating like a decentralized mesh network where people would be able to pay each other directly, or basically get paid or pay somebody for internet access in a similar way, like where you're streaming those payments. And so, yeah, that was like an incredible experience while I was working with them. And eventually, yeah, I just continued my journey into software development. And from there, really, that was kind of just like my starting point. And years later, I'm, you know, uh, doing what I'm doing now. So I'm just incredibly grateful for the opportunity that I've had with, getting started and continuing along.
Thank you for sharing your story. That really hit close to home for me as well because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to any school. Like I wouldn't say I'm self-taught. I'm taught people on the internet that took the time to share their knowledge and
Mm.
teach us. Um, what drove me the most towards software development engineering, the fact that you don't need raw materials, you just need your computer, and you could build amazing, incredible stuff in all kinds of industries with just you and your computer, and that to me is very magical to see like words come to life and to see uh, just how much you could do with just text. It's incredible. So thank you again for sharing your story. Um, was it difficult learning how to code? Was it difficult learning like software engineering by yourself?
Uh, yeah, I would say it was challenging. Um, it was challenging to get started, really not knowing how I would apply what I was using. So I actually kind of lied. I started coding back like way earlier than 2017. I taught myself how to like program Arduino boards when I was in college. Like this was just something I just wanted to do. I got like really fascinated with like some video I saw where someone like programmed like a remote control helicopter. And I was like, I could do that. I tried to do it for like a whole month and I couldn't get the thing to work. Like trying to actually like modulate the signals to control a remote control helicopter I bought. But like long story short is it was really like that was super easy because like I had a goal that I saw ahead of me. But then like I approached software again back in 2017, like I was just in this completely different world. Like I was trying to learn Python. I didn't know anything about web or the web architecture, any like anything about building out systems that could be used any other way other than the physical stuff, right? That I could actually tangibly hold. I didn't really know much about web technology at the time, and so I just didn't know what I could do with it. Honestly, I was just kind of hoping, like, yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll go into industry. I'll figure it out. But yeah, like I said, it was quite difficult in that respect because I just had no exposure. So
One of the pieces of advice that I heard the most when I was that you should start with a goal in mind. Like you will find something that you want to make or build, and then you use that as your learning process. So it sounds to me like you had similar struggles in terms of like figuring out how, like what path to take. A lot of people also that are self-taught seem to struggle with like they learn, and then they're not able to apply things. So seeing you go from that to now building real world products, I think a lot of people will find that very inspirational. I appreciate your time. There's one last question that I would like to ask. Um, what made it worth it? Why did you put up with the difficulty and the challenges to get where you are
I
today?
value autonomy, and I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and so um, just being able to go out and build things that I generally want to see in the world has been like, that in and of itself has been a reward, I would say. Like that makes it worth it every single day. So, and I get to better myself too, like by doing this. I get to like continue doing the thing that really does bring me enjoyment, which is building software, and you know, I get to see that through. So, yeah, I think it's definitely been worth it.
I loved your words about craftsmanship. It feels like that for me too. I feel like it is a craft, and I am constantly learning, and there is no end to it. There will always be more to learn. There will always be I can always perform better, and that keeps me alive, and it keeps me
Hmm.
going. It fuels me. It really does. So. I really want to thank you again for joining this podcast and for sharing your experience. I am going to be leaving links in the description for Knox Finance. If you'd like, I would also put your Twitter. And guys, if you have the time, check it out. It's definitely worth taking a look. And I want to end it on that positive note. Thank you so much, Courtney, for joining. And I hope to see you in the next one.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Talk to you later.